Hey guys, today we're going to talk about how to create our own methods. Now, before I jump in here, I want to link this to something we already know. We've been dealing with methods for a really long time. So one of the biggest ways we've been using methods is string methods. We've been using dot length, dot to uppercase, to dot equals, all these string methods. So these methods are located inside the string class that we don't see. We could see it, we could go look it up, we could go Google it, we can make it show up here in the Package Explorer and go peruse through it, but it's thousands of lines of code, and we don't really want to deal with that. But if we went and looked inside, we would see how these methods are created. So there has to be code behind these methods. What we've been dealing with when we do dot to uppercase to lowercase, dot length, those are what are called method calls. And so all we've been doing up until now is simply calling those methods or using those methods. Those methods sit and they wait until we need them before they run. They don't just run on their own, and they don't just do their job on their own. They wait until we type this code right here, and then they go, oh, they want to get the length of this string, and then it does its job. It runs whatever code it has. And so now we're going to take a look at how we can create our own methods. Now for us, we're going to start off slow. This is going to be like I think like a three-part little deal here we're going to do because there's different types of methods. And we're going to start with the most simple that we can create. And so first we'll start with what is a method. A method is a group of program statements that performs a specific task. So for instance, dot length. There's code there, its job, get the length of a string, right? Why would we use methods, or what's their benefit? Well, they help us simplify code by helping us reuse code. You could look at it, not to get them confused with loops, because loops can do the same thing. They can help us, simplify our code by not having repeated code. They can kind of do the same job, but we can use them anywhere we want to. With a loop, we've got to reuse that code back to back to back. Like it's got to go boom, 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 boom. With a method, we can call it anywhere in our code as many times as we want. So there's a lot more flexibility. And we'll talk about algorithms. An algorithm is a group of code that, or a collection of code that does a specific job, like a method. But it's code that you don't want to have to rewrite over and over. So if you had some code that per se, calculated something for you, and maybe it was 20 lines of code that did this calculation, you don't want to have to redo that code. And so you could put it into a method that accepted all the numbers that it needed to do the calculation, and it wouldn't matter what those numbers were. It could take them in at any time, perform the calculation, and give you back the answer. And you would never have to rewrite that code again. There's two different types of methods. There are void methods. These methods just are really simple. Those are the first ones we're going to look at. They simply do a job. That's it. The second type is a return method, and we'll get into these after when we get back from our break. Return methods, these return a value back to the method call. And I know it's kind of, maybe we'll look at one here in a second. It's kind of hard to explain. But if you think about it, looking back here, these are all return methods. Dot length. It's going to calculate the length and send you back the length. It's going to send you back a number, an integer. Dot to uppercase. It's going to take that string, convert it to uppercase, and send you back the result of that. Okay, so we've been using return methods this whole time. Every single one of these are return methods. So really, void methods are going to be the new ones for us to look at. So this is an example of a void method and how it would be set up, and I'll break down all the pieces. But what I want to bring to your attention is actually let me show you how it works first. Here's a really good example. So with this one, it's going to print hello from the main method. Then it's going to have the method call. Notice that this doesn't have anything attached to it like normal. Like, you know, if we were doing a string method, it would do str dot whatever. It doesn't need that. And we'll talk about why that is later. But all we need is a call to that method. So we type in the name of the method, attach a parentheses to the end, and we'll talk about more later what the parentheses is for, because it does have a job. And when I call that method, whenever it hits this line on line 6, my code is going to jump down to the method. It's going to look at this method header. It's going to read the information that it gives it. It's saying, oh, it's public, it's static, it's void. It's going to read that whole thing, which gives it information about the method. And then it's going to jump in and do the job, whatever it is that's in the method. For this one, it's simply going to print some stuff out. That's it. It's going to just run a print statement. And so it'll print stuff to the screen. When it gets to the end of the method, it's going to pop back up into the main method and run this last line of code. So if I hit play, I should get all 3 lines of the print, all 3 print statements. But I want to bring your attention to the fact that this says void. This is a void method. Void methods do not return any value back to the method call. Remember, we're used to return methods. We're used to doing str dot length, and it returns an integer back. Void methods don't return anything. They just run the code that's in the method, and that's it. So a lot of times they'll just print something. Sometimes they might not print. They could have all kinds of jobs. The only thing that distinguishes them from return methods is they don't return anything. They simply just do whatever their job is, and that's it. So let's break down real quick this piece here. All the pieces of the method. Some of these can be left out. So for instance, if I go here, I could leave, well, I can't do it here because you have to have static, and we'll talk about later why you have to have static. Mainly it's because we're running this in a main method, and the main method, which is a method by the way, is static, and you can only call static methods from other static methods. But what these have to do with is accessibility. Accessibility meaning where can I call this method from, and where can I use it from. We will get further into this accessibility later on down the road. Just for now, all of our methods are going to say public and static. And we'll break down when we can leave those out, what other things they could be, because it could be private, it could be public, it could be private, it could be protected. There's other things that could go in these spots, and we'll deal with that later. But for now, just know our accessibility is going to be public and static. What's going to come next is void. This is the type of method. I'll go ahead and tell you, if this were a return method, we would put, instead of void here, we would put the type of data that needs to be returned from the method. So dot length, for instance, with a string, it returns an integer. We would put an int here. Because this method doesn't return anything back, there is no return at all, it's void. And we put void there. It has to go in this order. Public, static, you got to have the accessibility first. Then you have the type. For us right now, all of our methods will be void until we learn, other things. Next is the signature. The signature includes the name of the method, so total in this case, and the parentheses. And we'll learn more about the parentheses later on. There are other things that the parentheses can do. And we'll get into that later. For now, for today, for tomorrow, for the next few days, we will just have empty parentheses, nothing inside of them, just like this. But the name and the parentheses together is called the signature. The whole line, public, static, void, total, that whole big thing, that's all information for Java. It tells it about the method and what it does, where it should be accessible from. That whole thing is called the method header. That's really important. You'll hear me call it the method header quite a bit. The inside is called the body, just like if you're writing a paper, it's the body. This method we're looking at here is simply calculate the total between two numbers that are there. This is just an example. This is not something you would probably ever do. And then it's going to print out the total. That's it, really simple. I want to bring your attention to this variable called total, though. I want you to notice that it's declared and initialized inside that method. This means that because it is declared inside the method, it cannot be accessed anywhere outside the method. This is its home. It was created here and it stays here. This is called its scope. You'll hear me bring up the word scope quite a bit in the future. Scope has to do with where things are accessible from. Because this is declared here, this is the only places it can be accessed. If a variable is likewise declared here, up here in the main method, I can't access it. Sorry, let me do this. I can't access it from down here. So I get all errors. It can't access it. It's declared here. This is its home. If you want to picture like its home is in between these curly brackets, that's fine. There are ways that we can access variables from method to method, and we'll get into that later. But for now, the ones that we declare inside, they're trapped in there. That's where they're trapped. This is the method call, what it would look like, simply the name and the parentheses. This is when it's going to run. So this method here sits and it waits. It does not do anything on its own. If I take this out, if I comment this out, it doesn't run. It'll just sit and it'll wait until I want to use it and I do the method call. So that's very important too. Okay, we talked about scope. That's about it. Let me show you real quick another example, another void method example. With this one, we have two methods. We have three. We have the main method. We have one called deep that just prints some stuff, right? But I want you to bring your attention to the fact that we can call methods from inside methods. This is evident right here even. This is the main method, and we're calling deep from it. So we're calling a method from within a method. But then here we're even going deeper. We're calling another method from inside this method that we created. So you'll learn how to get good at tracing this code. By tracing, I mean going from step to step. How is this thing going to step through? It's going to print, I am starting in main. When we have the method call here on line 6, that's going to bump it straight to this method. It's going to print, I am now in deep. Then we trace even deeper. This is where it gets kind of crazy. It's going to call this method, which means it's going to jump down here. It's going to print, I am now deeper. From there, it's going to go back up and finish calling that method. So now it's going to print, now I am back in deep. Then it's going to go back up to this original call up here on line 6, which is now done. And the last thing it'll print is now I am back in main. So it's pretty crazy. This is a really cool example if you want to come back and look at this later at some point at how this flows. I'll back it up and run it for you so you can kind of see how it's going to print. So I'm starting in main, method call, I'm now in deep, method call, I'm now in deeper, come back up, it's going to finish out this method with now I'm back in deep, and then it's going to go back up to the main, now I'm back in main. So it can get pretty crazy, and we will have some that do this, that we have method calls within method calls within methods and things like that. So, but yeah, that's it for void methods. We'll learn quite a bit more about methods throughout the week and then probably into next week.